Hi YouTube, this is Evie. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today I want to talk about the importance of structure in BDSM relationships. Now, in my time here on YouTube and my time making videos, I have spent a lot of time talking about BDSM dynamics, how to establish relationships, negotiation, contracts, rules, protocol, punishments, can dominants be punished, how do submissives ask for what they want, all of that stuff. I have spent a long time talking about. But I think there are still a lot of things that I have not gotten to cover yet. In particular, sort of more nuanced, I wouldn't even necessarily say more advanced, but just maybe something that doesn't come to the mind right away, or not something that's really like popularly talked about, but is something I think can definitely be used to enhance your dynamic, enhance your relationship, whatever it happens to look like. And one of those things that I want to talk about is structure. And I know what you're thinking, Evie, how is structure different from rules? Why are you even talking about this? Have you made a million videos talking about this? And I would say there's actually a lot of different ways to think about structure that maybe I haven't gotten to cover in other videos. And I think, generally speaking, as S-types, we generally prefer very organized, very structured lives, and that's sort of where I want to start this conversation. Structure is really important to a lot of submissives. For a lot of this is why we are drawn to this side of the slash. We take comfort in knowing what the rules of the game are on a level that most other people, especially vanilla people, don't really understand or get. We find freedom in having knowledge of how everything is going to work out. If you do X, then Y happens. When X happens, this is what we're supposed to do. When my partner says this is how I'm supposed to respond. Having all of those things worked out, especially if you're an S-type, if you're a person who has anxiety, if you're somebody who just really is detail-oriented and needs to know everything about everything, structure is there. But actually establishing structure is something that I think gets missed a lot in BDSM relationships. The focus is on creating rules, and I think that is a great thing, and not all relationships need them, whereas structure can sort of be like this assumed thing that not everybody really like explicitly negotiates to the same extent, because there are a million different reasons why you might need structure for certain things, or exactly what you need to have outlined in what situations. And what I want to talk about first is a situation where you can use structure to supplement rules. So how I would think of rules is, okay, rules are this list of expectations that you have. So let's say, for example, you have a rule that says, you know, I will not eat cookies unless I ask my dominant for permission first. That's a great rule, but there's a lot of unspoken or maybe unoutlined expectations where you need additional structure to be able to fill in the blanks there. So for example, let's say you ask your dominant for a cookie and they say no. Are you allowed to ask again the same day? If you ask your dominant, let's say over text message, if they don't respond within a certain amount of time, is that an automatic yes or an automatic no? If you are not with your dominant at all, do you have to ask permission? If you are at a party type situation, if you're at a family gathering, a holiday, a business party, a special dinner, do you still have to ask permission then to be able to have sweets or a cookie or whatever it is that your rule says? What defines a cookie? Is a cookie like a biscuit you would have with tea? Is a giant sugar cookie considered the same level of cookie as like a Girl Scout cookie or something like that? Are there certain situations or types of things where you need to ask for permission, where you don't need to ask for it? Is this a rule that's in place all the time? Is it only during the week or only during the weekends? What if you're with vanilla family? How do you go about, or even friends for that matter, how do you go about asking permission in that situation? There's a lot that can happen there that is an unknown until you actually execute the rule, and then you go, I did not know what to do in that situation. Let's figure out some more things where we can make this work better in the future. And I've had this happen in my protocol so many times where it's like, I didn't realize I needed to ask that, or I didn't know what to do in that situation, and yada yada, and you work through it. And that is what additional structure is there for. So think about it like this. If you have a rule and it's like, it's number one, rule says blank, The structure underneath that is the A, B, C, D, E, F, G that goes through and explains all of the different situations, circumstances, variables that can happen that affect how the rule is supposed to be followed through on. As well, you can have structure just be the rule. It's not supplementary in any way. It just is how it is. So for example, in my protocol, I have a rule where I have to let my sir know when I'm on the way, and I have to ask permission to be able to enter his house. The structure is built in to that rule because the rule ends by saying, if I'm not able to contact him within a 10-minute period, I am to enter the house quickly and quietly and find him upon entering. And that's basically how it works out. So there are times where structure is built into the rule, and there are times when the structure is supplementary. I find it most helpful to write it down and have this sort of, as notes or an addendum to the core rules. Some people build it in right away, and some people it just ends up being very non-spoken. And I think this is common mostly in situations where people don't have any formal rules. And I want to emphasize, it is totally okay to not have formal rules. If that works for you, that is great. Everybody has different needs and desires in BDSM, and some people want a 30-page rule book. Some people have this desire for something where it's just unspoken, where the power exchange is inherent and flows day by day and week by week, and that can be difficult to execute well, but it is definitely possible, and unspoken structure is a way to do that. So for example, you could have a situation where you're in a relationship and you just know your expectation is to wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and the first thing that you do is make coffee for your sir, take the dog out, and once the dog is out, then you wake up your sir, then you both get in the shower together and you continue on with your day. And how structured your day is and how many things are very iterative, where you at 6:30 you do this, and 9:30 you do this, at 11:30 you do this, yada yada yada, is up to you. But for the most part, these things end up being unspoken, and they're not quite the same thing as rules, because generally speaking, when you break a element of the structure, if you do something that's outside the norm, like let's say for example, rather than getting up at the time you are supposed to, you get up 15 minutes late because your alarm didn't go off, or something else happened where you just ended up getting out of bed later than you're supposed to. Violating structure doesn't tend to impose the same degree of punishment, if any punishment at all. It's just sort of this weird situation where the DS doesn't quite fit right, or something seems like, oh, I did something wrong. And the reason why a lot of times the structure doesn't have the same repercussions as breaking a rule does is they're not explicitly negotiated. They're understood. They're sort of done on the fly. And a lot of times they're just learned behavior from living with somebody or spending a lot of time with that person. So for example, a lot of times what happens when I'm with my sir on the weekends is he asks me to make coffee and oatmeal for him in the morning, and I know exactly how to make his coffee and exactly how to make his oatmeal because he wants it almost the exact same way every single time, unless he's using a particular different flavor of oatmeal or what have you. But generally speaking, that is an expectation he has of me, is when he gets up in the morning and I'm also waking up, he will ask me to make coffee and oatmeal, and it is my obligation as the service submissive to make that for him. There are a lot of other things like this that end up happening in BDSM relationships. So for example, you may not have an explicit rule that your dominant is the one to walk through the door first, but perhaps just because of the nature of your dynamic, it ends up being that your dominant opens the door for you, and then he walks out in front ahead of you to sort of guide you along where you're going. Even if that is not an explicit rule where it's said that, you must walk 3 paces behind me on my right side whenever we go anywhere, and that is perfectly okay as well. Now, I think the difficult part for a lot of people can be knowing when to implement structure, how to ask for more structure, especially if you're an S-type and you have, again, that list of 30 pages of rules. It can be difficult to be like, I want you to do more and I need more clarification on things, but I think that actually makes you a good submissive. If you're a submissive and you need more structure in your relationship, you should feel empowered to ask for it, because really what you want to do is give over more of your submission to your dominant. And I for the most part. If you do it respectfully, that should be respected in kind, and they should at least hear you out or figure out some ideas of how to add more structure. I think a lot of times the need for structure comes from an unknown place. You don't really know why you need it, you don't really know what you need, but something doesn't feel quite right. You don't feel like you're getting the level of power exchange that you want, or you don't feel like you really actually know what you're supposed to be doing. And asking for more structure can be a great way to do that, and it can help you figure out exactly what is making you feel like things are a bit off, because very oftentimes it is about not knowing what you're supposed to be doing in any given moment of time, or not knowing how to interpret a rule, or not knowing how to do the certain action you've been asked to perform. And adding more to that can actually be helpful rather than just scrapping the rule because this isn't working and we don't know how to do it and blah. And so that can be a way to make things work if you're struggling with actually figuring out how to interpret what you're supposed to be doing. As the dominant, I think it can also be difficult to know exactly when to add structure and knowing when to leave it up to the submissive to figure it out on their own. And I think actually even just letting the submissive know that, for example, if we have a rule where the submissive is supposed to show the dominant a picture of their outfit every morning for approval, maybe you let your submissive know, if I don't get back to you within 10 minutes, consider that outfit approved, you are good to go for the day. And that just leaves it up to them to be able to create an approvable outfit without necessarily you as the dominant having to, go to any extra work to make sure that, outfits that have this element will always be accepted and elements that have this element will never be accepted. And it kind of lets, both of you have more freedom in terms of, not having to worry so much about like accidentally breaking or forgetting a rule, because you've built in that, oh, if so-and-so doesn't respond within this time, or if I don't hear back on my question within this time, it's considered an automatic no or an automatic yes. So that could be very helpful as well. I would assume as a dominant that if you want to add more structure, the best way to do it is going to be sit down, talk to your submissive just as a submissive would with their dominant, and say, this is what I would like to do, this is what I would like to change, here is some additional clarification that is necessary on X, Y, and Z, here's how it's going to be executed, how do you feel about that? And then you go on your merry kinky way, and hopefully adding this has been helpful and will lead to more wonderful DS feelings and development. And that's really everything I have to cover in this video. If you liked it, you found it helpful, do let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already and you want to see more, do consider subscribing to my channel. I make videos twice a week talking about BDSM and kink and alternative lifestyles. If you want to support this channel because you love it oh so much, I do recommend going to my Patreon. I have tons of great perks, tons of unique things you can access as a Patreon, and it is really what makes this possible. If I didn't have Patreon, I wouldn't be able to film videos, I wouldn't be able to basically do anything involving YouTube anymore, so adpocalypse, yay! Anyways, that is all I want to say for this video. Links to everything down in the description, social media, etc. But until I see you next time, have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.